On July the 1st, 2015, 32-year-old Kate Steinle was walking with her father and a friend along Pier 14 in the Embarcadero district of San Francisco. She was shot in the back by an illegal immigrant, Jose Inez Garcia Zarate. Kate died 2 hours later in the hospital as a result of her injuries. But Jose Inez Garcia Zarate wasn't just any illegal immigrant. He had previously been deported from the United States a total of 5 times. But not only had Garcia Zarate been deported from the US 5 times, he also had 7 felony convictions to his name. And at the time of the shooting, he was on probation in Texas. And let's have a quick rundown of his criminal history, which spans well over 2 decades. No one knows exactly when Garcia Zarate arrived for the first time in the US. However, in 1991, he was convicted for the first time on a drugs charge in Arizona. In 1993, he was convicted a further 3 times in Washington state for felony heroin possession and manufacturing narcotics. In June 1994, following another drug conviction and jail term, this time in Oregon, the US Immigration and Naturalization Service deported him. However, within 2 years, Garcia Zarate had returned to the US and was again convicted of heroin possession in Washington state. He was deported for the second time in 1997. On February the 2nd, 1998, Garcia Zarate was deported for the 3rd time after re-entering the US through Arizona. United States Border Patrol caught him 6 days later at a border crossing, and a federal court sentenced him to 5 years and 3 months in a federal prison for unauthorized re-entry. In 2003, he was deported for the 4th time by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, commonly known as ICE, who are the successor organization to the Immigration and Naturalization Service. However, Garcia Zarate yet again re-entered the US through the Texas border, and in June 2009, he was handed another federal prison sentence for re-entry before being deported for the 5th time. Less than 3 months later, after his 5th deportation, he was caught attempting to cross the border in Eagle Pass, Texas. He pleaded guilty to felony re-entry. Upon sentencing, a federal court recommended that Garcia Zarate be placed in a federal medical facility as soon as possible. Then, on March the 26th, 2015, after Garcia Zarate had completed his latest prison term in San Bernardino County for entering the country without proper documents, at the request of the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, the United States Bureau of Prisons turned him over to the San Francisco authorities for an outstanding drug warrant. San Francisco officials transported Garcia Zarate to San Francisco County Jail to face a 20-year-old felony charge of selling and possessing marijuana. Now that is some criminal record. So instantly, any right-thinking person would ask the question, why was Garcia Zarate on the streets of San Francisco? Why was a man who wasn't a US citizen, a man who had previously been deported 5 times, a man who had 7 felony convictions to his name, allowed to walk the streets freely in an American city? Why, if he wasn't in jail, hadn't he been deported immediately? Well, the answer is quite simple. It is liberalism and liberal politicians. You see, when it comes down to it, liberal politicians value their multicultural and mass immigration projects far more than they value the safety of white lives. In fact, they really don't value white lives at all. And that is the reason Kate Steinle is not with us today. She was sacrificed on the altar of multiculturalism. Garcia Zarate was walking the streets of San Francisco as a free man, not because he had yet again slipped the net of law enforcement, not because he had snuck back into America, not because he was on the run or escaped from a secure unit, but because San Francisco is what liberal politicians have proudly proclaimed to be a sanctuary city. And for all those who don't live in North America, what is a sanctuary city? In the United States and Canada, a sanctuary city is a city where liberal officials deliberately set out to break federal immigration laws and hinder the national government effort to enforce those immigration laws and deport illegal immigrants. So despite Immigration and Customs Enforcement issuing a legal notice to detain Garcia Zarate, requesting that he be kept in custody until immigration authorities could pick him up, San Francisco's liberal politicians disregarded the detention notice and released him. He was released from San Francisco County Jail on April the 15th, 2015. And on July the 1st, less than 80 days after his release, he killed Kate Steinle. Had it not been for liberal policies and the liberal politicians who enacted them, Kate would still be alive today. Let's make this completely clear. Had the liberal politicians detained Garcia Zarate in jail as per the detention notice issued by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, he would not have been free to kill Kate Steinle. Kate Steinle is dead because of these politicians. Kate Steinle is dead because liberals value the rights of illegal immigrants, and in this case, a 7-time convicted felon, over the safety of white people. It would be easy to say whites are now second-class citizens, but this goes way beyond that. Because this isn't just about sending whites to the back of the queue or hitting them with higher taxes. This is about whites dying because their safety is seen as a secondary concern to the liberals' desire for mass immigration and multiculturalism. But the real sting in the tail of this horrific and very sad case is that Kate's killer was not found guilty of her murder. A jury decided it was just all a huge accident, an unfortunate series of events. So let's look at the case for a few moments. Garcia Zarate put together 2 ludicrous stories as a defense. Yes, 2. You see, he changed his mind on his own defense because his first story was so ludicrous that even he realized he was on to a loser with it. So what was his original defense? Well, he admitted in a KGO TV interview that he committed the shooting, but said that he found the gun wrapped in a t-shirt under a bench after taking sleeping pills he claimed he found in a trash can. But why was he firing the gun? Well, at first he claimed he was aiming at sea lions. Then he realized what a ludicrous story that was. He changed his tune and claimed that the gun went off accidentally. Yet a supervising criminologist at the San Francisco Police Department Crime Lab testified that the gun was in excellent condition and would not have fired without someone pulling the trigger. And where had the gun come from? Well, the gun in question had been stolen in downtown San Francisco from a Bureau of Land Management Ranger's personal vehicle on June the 27th, 2015. But despite these inconsistencies in his defense, despite the gun being stolen, despite expert testimony, and despite his criminal past, Jose Inez Garcia Zarate was acquitted of murder and involuntary manslaughter charges, as well as being acquitted of assault with a deadly weapon. Jurors convicted Garcia Zarate of merely being a felon in possession of a firearm. So not only did the jury decide he did not intend to kill Kate, but more scandalously, they decided that he didn't even commit manslaughter or even assault. In fact, the whole thing was just one big accident. And the only thing Garcia Zarate did wrong was to pick up the gun, which may have been a matter of mere curiosity. He simply stumbled on a bundle of rags, and as he unwrapped them, a gun concealed in the rags happened to go off, and the bullet killed Kate Steinle by total accident. So a young lady is dead, and despite the perpetrator being an illegal immigrant who shouldn't have even been in the country, despite the gun being stolen, despite a series of improbable stories presented as a defense, the official narrative is that it was all an unavoidable accident and no one is to blame. And liberals love it. But not only have liberals rejoiced in the verdict, but the media have also attacked anyone who has dared to claim that there has been a miscarriage of justice or drawn the conclusion that if San Francisco was not a sanctuary city and if there was proper border control, then Kate would still be alive today. The Washington Post led with the tweet, and I quote, "White nationalists angered by Mexican immigrants' acquittal in Kate Steinle's killing." End quote. Yes, white nationalists. Because anyone who is angered by the killing of a young American woman by a 5 times deported, 7-time convicted felon is a white nationalist. Or what they really mean when they use the term white nationalist is an evil racist, implying that the real bad guys in this case are the people who are angry about this horrible and completely avoidable situation. Yet again, this shows how degenerate the liberal moral compass actually is, as liberals are far angrier over the response to Kate Steinle's death than they are over the fact she is dead. Newsweek ran with the even more scandalous headline, and I quote from the article, "Nazis take anger over Kate Steinle verdict to the White House, where they are outnumbered by Antifa. President Trump and Fox News aren't the only ones angry over the verdict in the Kate Steinle trial, where an undocumented Mexican immigrant, Jose Inez Garcia Zarate, was acquitted of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, as well as most of the charges he faced. Neo-Nazis and white nationalists, many of whom were present in Charlottesville, Virginia this August, when a young man allegedly murdered anti-racist activist Heather Heyer, gathered in front of the White House this afternoon to use Steinle's death to call for stricter laws on immigration." End quote. Newsweek are clearly implying that you would only care about the death of a white lady at the hands of an illegal alien if you are a bigot, or worse still, a Nazi. Salon gushed, and I quote, "Conservatives are seething about the verdict in the Kate Steinle case. In a complicated case, a Mexican man wasn't found guilty of a white girl's death. That's angered conservatives." End quote. Shouldn't the death of an American woman at the hands of a man who was an illegal alien and who shouldn't even have been on American soil anger any decent-minded folk? Well, apparently not, because the other huge thing you can take away from this case and the media and liberal reaction to this case is that white lives don't matter. And also, if you think that white lives do matter, then you are a racist, a white nationalist, and a Nazi. Because according to liberals, this was all just a big accident, and anyone who says otherwise should shut up, because they're the bad guys. And when I say people are being told to shut up about this case, the media are so desperate to give this case as little coverage as possible. A leading US TV network, MSNBC, devoted just 2 minutes and 15 seconds of airtime to the case. But in an even more sickening turn, San Francisco officials have actually removed a memorial to Kate that was placed on the pier where she was shot. And the media are claiming this was done at her own family's request, as the memorial was placed there by the alt-right. Now let's compare this with another case. Remember when Trayvon Martin was killed? Remember how the liberal media cried that Black Lives Matter and celebrated black in-group preference when dealing with the case? Remember how President Obama said that Trayvon Martin could have been his son? Remember the marches, the protests, the vigils, and the memorials. But where are the memorials for Kate? Cleared away, as Kate's memorial is an alt-right hate symbol. Where are the protests for Kate? Ushered out of cities by the police and labelled as Nazi gatherings. But couldn't Kate Steinle have been your daughter? Just like Trayvon Martin could have been Obama's son? No, of course not. Because if you look at Kate Steinle and think she could have been your daughter or maybe your sister, if you think like that, then you are, according to the media, the the worst kind of evil imaginable, a white person with in-group preference. This case, the way it has been covered by the media and the way liberals have rejoiced in this miscarriage of justice, is one of the most stomach-churning examples of liberal groupthink that I have ever seen. This illustrates perfectly just how liberal policy making, how politically correct propaganda, and a controlled media are turning Western countries into places where those of European descent aren't just second-class citizens, but are people whose lives don't matter. The politicians who crafted these laws and the media who endorse these laws and shame those who speak out against them have Kate's blood on their hands. And my message to these people is simple. We will not go quietly into the night. This is not the end of the West or the end of people of European descent. This is the beginning of our rebirth. This is our new dawn, and we will never forget the victims of multiculturalism. These politicians and their internationalist controllers need to realize white lives matter, and we are never going to slacken or tire in our quest to ensure a future for our people. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help spread the message by liking and sharing it on social networks. If you want to hear more from me, please hit the subscribe button, as new videos are posted every week. You can also read my book, The Fall of Western Man. It's available as a free ebook and in both hardback and paperback, and all the links are in the description below. Finally, if you want to join in the discussion with me, feel free to add me on Facebook, and you can now follow me on Twitter as well. Everyone's welcome.